Guys, it's Shane Larson from the Game Time Guru podcast. I'm excited to be here with you this week for an awesome interview. Before we get into this interview with the coach of my alma mater, and as you know, we discuss the resurgence of the Meridian High School Basketball program, I ask that you please leave me a review on Apple Podcasts. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast on whichever podcast platform you're listening on, and make sure to get ready for some amazing sports content. This is the Game Time Guru. So,
what time is it? Game time! Boom.
If you're sick of the mainstream sports outlets, well, so was I. So I started my own show. I'm Shane Larson, and this is the Game Time Guru. It's different than other talk shows. I'm providing a panoramic view on sports so you can see them through a different lens. So buckle up and let's go. What's up, everyone? Welcome out to the Game Time Guru podcast. Once again, I am your host, Shane Larson. We are going 3.5 years strong into the show, and we have surpassed 50,000 downloads, 79 different countries. So if you have not done so yet, make sure you head on over to iTunes, leave me a review on the podcast, subscribe to the show, and share it with your friends and family. Now, today, I have an awesome guest on the show, and this is actually a really, really special episode for me because I've been following this individual for the last couple of years, just kind of admiring his work as he took over my alma mater, Meridian High School's basketball team, and kind of got them over the hump, if you will, of what they had been experiencing since the last year that we had made it to the state tournament. And a lot of you guys who've been following my show know that Meridian High School Basketball, my senior year, we made it to the state tournament. We had a pretty cool season that year, but they hadn't made it back since. And then we were going on like 14 years. And now the man right here is the one who got him back to the tournament this last season. His name's Jeff Sanor. Jeff, thanks so much for joining the show.
Hey, I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, man. Now, it's awesome just to see what you've done with this program over there, and we're going to get to that a little bit, but we want to get to know you. The part of this show, Jeff, is just getting to know our guests and humanizing it a little bit as well. So we want to get to know you. You've been in the coaching thing for a little while, but before coaching, you were a player, and you even played at the D1 level. So let's go back in time before that. Where are you from, and when did you pick up a basketball for the first time?
Well, believe it or not, I'm originally from Caldwell, Idaho. Born over in Caldwell. We moved to Boise when I was 3 years old, raised in Boise, grew up in the Bora district, and it was Boise's the best place ever back then. So then my dad got remarried, and our new family was from Boise High district, so we had to transfer. I transferred the seventh grade. I transferred over and went to East Junior High School. I went to West Junior High School first, then East, then North, and then to Boise High. And I just grew up in Boise, Idaho.
Man, okay, so you're from the Valley, like you're around here. That's why people kind of like know your name. They know who you are, but you played in a lot of areas, kind of just growing up doing your thing. Did you play multiple sports, or did you kind of focus in on basketball as a teen?
No, we played multiple sports, but back then it was just that's what everybody did. I played baseball, then we played football, and then we played basketball. And I think the difference between then and now is that we actually had time between seasons. Nowadays a kid who wants to pursue basketball, he's playing probably 10 or 11 months out of 12. We didn't have that. We had a 2-month baseball season, and then we had all summer off, and then we would have a 3-month, 2.5-3 month football season, and we'd have a month off, and we'd have a 2-month basketball season. And so we had time, which I think is something that we're really missing nowadays, that we had time to get excited about the next sport and kind of practice up, play in the backyard and things like that. So we played pretty much every sport there was.
When did you know that basketball was going to be the kind of route that you took to get to the next level for like the collegiate realm?
Yeah, well, I don't know about the collegiate realm, but basketball was always my sport.
Okay.
I played football, I played baseball, but basketball is the one that I really was the most excited about. And mostly that came from a couple things. One, going to see the Harlem Globetrotters, right? Like everybody, they make you fall in love with basketball. And the other one was going to Boise State games back then. And that was when Steve Connor and Trent Johnson and Danny Jones were there. And it was about 1976 that team was really good and won the Big Sky. And they played in the old gym, which was, basically like nowadays is about like a high school gym. I think it held 5,500 people. We would sit on the stage and we would just go crazy. And that was also back when the players could hang out with the alumni. So my folks were boosters, and we would go over to Thanksgiving at one of the assistant coaches' houses, and there's Trent, and me and my brother and Trent are wrestling on the floor, and he's throwing us every which way but loose. But that's really when basketball was my thing, and I just fell in love with it and knew I wanted to play it.
That's so awesome, man. Now, what took you to UW? Like, that's my question here. As I researched your career, I'm just curious. So you're born and raised here, and we know that you kind of, we'll get to that part about playing at Boise State. But what took you over to Washington?
Well, again, difference between then and now. So when I was in high school and I was player of the year my junior year, we lost in the state finals to Bora, which was pretty rough. But the day after we lost, my dad walks in with this big box of letters and things like that, and they had kind of kept all of my recruiting attention away from me. They didn't want it to be a distraction. So my coach and my dad just got together and said, hey, let's just give this to him at the end of the season so he doesn't have to think about it. So it was, you go from the ultimate low of losing the state championship to the very next day, and you're getting letters from Iowa, you're getting letters from Texas, you're getting letters from Kansas, and it's a pretty good way to get over the loss of a state title. So then I got recruited pretty hard. I got an invite, of all things, to a basketball camp. It's called the Sports World Superstar Camp, and it was at Cal. It wasn't Fullerton. It was anyways down in Santa Barbara, and I was there with the best players in the West Coast. I got on the same team. They just lined you up by height, picked your team. I got on the same team as Gary Payton, and we just routed everybody. I mean, we just killed it. Nobody knew who I was because I was from Idaho, but we just killed everybody. And that's when the recruiting just went. I mean, it went from a level 8 to a level 15, really. And so, at that point, you're getting calls from all over the place. There was no social media. There was no texting. You're on the phone for hours and hours and hours. And I met one of the coaches at UW was Joe Cravens. Really liked him. And Coach Russo, who was at Louisiana Tech, coached Karl Malone, showed me a great highlight film, nothing but dunks. And so they just got me really excited about what they were trying to build up there. So I got caught up in that. I narrowed it down to probably like my last 7 schools, and UW was at the top. I took my visit, and I was like, yeah, that just feels like where I wanted to go.
That's awesome. That's actually a really cool story, because as you're talking about it, obviously I didn't know any of that. So the importance of like actually going to camps too. I mean, we'll talk about that in a minute too, with like club basketball being so prevalent now, but back then, I mean, you got a lot of exposure from that because you're from Idaho. So it's really hard. Like, and I still think we struggle with that here in Idaho. I'll let you elaborate on that later too, but I still think there is some struggle trying to get the exposure out of the Idaho kids. And I mean, although you're player of the year, stellar athlete, like, yeah, you're getting some offers, like you weren't quite to that level yet. And then all of a sudden you go to a camp and you compete with the best of the best. All of a sudden, boom, then it clicks. So you go to Washington, and you ended up playing a couple years there, and then you finished your career at Boise State. Is that correct?
Yeah, I went there. I did not play hardly at all my freshman year at Washington. I ended up starting my sophomore and junior year, and we just never got it in sync. We had I think when we were freshmen, our recruiting class coming in, I think we were ranked second in the Pac-10 back then, not the Pac-12. And I think we were 5th in the nation. And we had talent. We just could never put it together, which is pretty big regret. Probably a little bit why I'm into coaching and things like that. But so I went there, and then I ended up transferring to Boise State and redshirting, and then playing my final year at Boise State. That's
so awesome. So you got to kind of come full circle. Come back to the Valley where you used to watch some games over there, and then finish up over there. Now, This is where things get interesting. Now you get to hear your side, and you just even talked about it right there. You kind of had, you're like, okay, what could I do differently here? Like, you learn from your coaches. We won't name names or anything like that, but every one of us does. Like, you learn from the coaches that are around you, the goods, the bads. You can take good things from any coach, in my opinion, but there's also things that you might do differently. I wouldn't say bad, but you might do differently in regards to culture and stuff like that. So when did you actually decide, okay, I'm going to make the transition from the playing side of things to the coaching side of things? How far after your career was over from the playing aspect did you make that transition to coaching?
It wasn't even a year. It was, I got a call from George Cox, who was the Boise High coach at the time. Coach Tordeman had moved on, and George Cox, who was the sophomore coach when I was playing there, and he was instrumental to me. I really do want to say something about teachers. That, man, I'll tell you what, you get a chance to thank a teacher, do it, because those people they're wonderful. And George Cox, I owe more than I can explain to George Cox, who took a kid whose parents had split up, and I was kind of not getting it done in the classroom. This guy sacrificed every lunch of his just for me to come and help me get caught up. For 2 years he did that. So George was there, and he asked me to come in and help. And I took the defensive side because I was at Boise State and we were all defense when I was there. And so I started coaching at Boise High. Meanwhile, another guy named Bruce Perry found me and gave me a 6th grade AAU team to coach up. And so I was coaching those guys back before AAU was really a thing. And we took them to Salt Lake, Seattle, Reno, Vegas, and did all that and I took them from 12 years old all the way up to seniors. So it was great. Meanwhile, I had a little interruption. I went to a tournament over in Eastern Idaho, played really well. Coach Dye was the Stampede coach. And he called me. This is a couple years after I played. And he called me and he was asking me about a couple players that were there. And I said, oh yeah, this guy who's from Weber State, man, this guy could play and he's really good if you can get him. He asked me about another guy and I joked. I said, hey, if you take him, I'm coming out of retirement. And I was probably 25 at the time. And so, and he asked me, he says, well, are you serious? Cause we'd love to have you over here and stuff like that. So, what I try to tell everybody, especially my own son, is look, you're not gonna be playing your best basketball until you're 23, 24 years old. So be patient. That doesn't answer your question, but I started coaching then. I coached them and Boise High for, I think it was probably until about 1998, 99. And then I took a couple years off. Then I coached my nephew and his team. And then I took a couple years off. And then we started Boise Slam and started coaching there. And I've been coaching ever since. So it's off and on 20 plus years.
Man, and you just brought up a really good point. So first, you've been coaching for a while. You had a couple interruptions there, but now I just took a note there when you said that, talking to your son, best basketball comes when you're like, 23, 24, 25 years old. I've talked about this before, Coach. I myself personally, right? I was 17 as a senior. I was a young kid. I was actually 16 years old as a senior for a week because my birthday was at the very end of August. So we started last year of school, like very end of August. So I was like, oh, I'm a 16-year-old senior. I was just young. I graduated when I was 17. From a basketball aspect, I could always shoot. I led the league in 3-point percentage, but I was a 6-man. I didn't start. I wasn't like playing, 4 quarters a game. I was playing half the game, and I knew my role. But I left on a church mission, came home later on, and by the time I was about 21, 22, that's when my body matured. That's when I was playing the best basketball in my life. At that point, though, had I gone to a junior college or something like that, I feel like I could have probably actually done some things. But I ended up getting married and taking some other routes in life. But I always felt that same way. I always felt like when your body matures, a lot of athletes, they just feel they get impatient. Like you said, they get impatient and then they just kind of give up on it. I'm like, no, like if you guys can take these opportunities and build, your body truly will mature. Some people don't see that. They don't think that that's going to happen, but it does. Your body naturally matures. Your mentality is different. And if you keep getting those reps, like it's so much better. I'm just so glad you actually said that in the midst of all the discussion on the coaching side of things. It's just crazy.
If I can tag that, there's so much that you just said that needs to be separated because it's all so important. Physical maturity is one. I was young for my grade. My birthday's June, so I'm not as young as you, but I was young too. Now, physical maturity is one thing, okay, and I was lucky athletically. I was very mature. Up here, I wasn't. And so, what I had when I kind of had my little comeback for, a month or so is I had been coaching for 2 or 3 years. And so I saw the game from a different perspective, which when I played helped me because I was able to understand what my coaches have been telling me all these years. It's amazing when you're coaching, you start repeating the stuff that other coaches had told you. So there's a physical aspect. There's also the maturity aspect. And we can get into club basketball, but the biggest problem that I see right now is you got all these people that don't know anything. Okay, literally, they don't know anything. Some do, but not many. And they grab a 3rd or 4th grader and they start talking to this 3rd and 4th grader like, "Hey, man, this kid's going to be a Division I player in the 3rd or 4th grade." And I'm like, "You got to be kidding me! First off, you don't even know what a Division I player looks like. Second off, you tell me how tall that kid's going to be by the time they're 17, 18 years old. You tell me how much they're going to weigh. You tell me, are they going to be interested in girls? Are they going to be interested in partying? Are they, and so I think one of the things that really hurts a lot of kids right now is that they think they need to be a finished product by the time they're 17. And it's that there's just nothing farther from the truth. And so, one of the things that frustrates people about me as a club coach is I bring people along slowly, and everybody they want it right now. And I want my kid to average, not everybody, I shouldn't say that, because the club team that I had, they all understood what we were doing. But the popular thing to do right now is post a lot of things of myself or my kid on social media, let everybody see how great he's doing in the 7th grade. And I think to myself, who cares who the best 7th grade basketball player is? Who cares? We want to know who's going to be able to really get something done when they're 18, 19, 20 years old. And you're not going to know that if these kids peak too early or feel this self-imposed pressure. We got to get into player rankings here in a little bit, but this self-imposed pressure of, well, I was the best 5th grader, that means I'm supposed to be the best, all the way. And they don't realize that other kids are going to catch them. So it's a long story, man, but we could talk for hours on that one because it's near and dear to my heart.
Well, I'm just super glad you even brought that up in the first place because it's so true. And I think the added pressures now compared to, like, I tell people it's been 14 years since I graduated. That's, in the retrospect, that's not that long. But the additional pressures of social media, like you just said, we got middle schoolers getting posted like all over TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, everywhere, posting all over. So like you're in high school, you're trying to add up to these, like, live up to these pressures. Or you might be the star player at your particular school, so you feel like this additional pressure, but you still have a lot you can learn, a lot more you can grow, and they have to like do that. And there's a million club teams now, whereas when I was in school, it was Boise Flight or Idaho Select, and that was it. Like that was all you had and Idaho Select was not even there yet. Actually, they were kind of still in their like beginning phase, but Boise Flight was it. So we didn't have club teams all over. Now there's club teams everywhere. So if you're not playing club, you almost feel like you're going to be left behind. So you got to go do that. And it's just a lot of additional pressures, man. It's crazy. Now, in regards to club sports too, Coach, before we get into this Meridian High thing, the club sports, you have been coaching at the club level for a while. And we've talked about club sports on this show before and our opinions on the matter and whether or not it's good for athletes. What's your opinion on that? Like, do you feel like it's been good for the development of your athletes in regards to basketball?
That is a tough question. I think the right club situation for the right kid is great. I think clubs provide a really good opportunity. I don't think there's a bad club out there. Okay. I think everybody starts clubs with the best of intentions. They want to help. They want to help kids progress. They want to help kids get maybe just some additional skill work. Or like you said, hey man, we got to play club just to keep up with everybody else that's playing club. So, I think there's a lot of good that comes from it. I think that there's some real challenges with it that, club sports isn't for everybody. And, I don't even really know how to answer your question, but I think overall it's a good thing, but it has to be done, to me, a specific way to bring the most benefit. And I just, like you said, we got a million clubs around here, which means the talent pool is so watered down. So it really becomes tough for kids to get out of club sports what they should, because you're just, you usually have one dominant team. You go to a tournament, you play 4 games. 2 of the games are laughers, right? They either get blasted by a bunch or you win by a bunch. And then the other 2 are competitive. So, is that good for kids? Is it good for kids to grow up? Like, my brother and I talk about this all the time. You could put 50 kids in a gym, okay, all wearing white t-shirts. And I could separate from 5 different clubs, so 10 per club. And I can separate and tell you basically where every one of those kids plays club basketball, because this club runs this offense. They teach their players this way. The other club runs it a different way. And they're so identifiable. What I've tried to teach, and I was fortunate because I was 6'5", so I could play one of 4 positions. That's the way I try to teach it. I don't want to create a system that these kids grow up in, and that's the only system that they know. I want to create basketball players so they can go and they can play in any system. And if you look at the downside of clubs in Boise, Idaho, that's the downside.
I can totally see that as I'm sitting here thinking, like, this is why you're such a good coach. This is why you're as successful as you are, is because of the mentality and the theories that you bring into it from the coaching aspect. I've noticed that. I've covered the Northwest Premier Invitational for the last 2 years, doing play-by-play for them. And just seeing all the club teams around the entire region, it's like you can kind of see exactly what you were just saying. Now it's like starting to like ring true in my head. I'm like, okay, that's exactly what was happening. I don't have like a strong opinion on it. I just see that a lot of club teams, they're good for a lot of exposure. Like, you'll get a lot of scouts out there sometimes and whatnot, but at times I think it does hinder players from my perspective. I think if they're not coached correctly, they're running certain things and then they form into that type of player. But then when they go back to their high schools and they're trying to play in a certain offense completely separate from what they're playing in club ball, it's not just run and gun, this and that. They have to run certain things. It can kind of hinder their development. And then all of a sudden they have a bad rap because they have a bad high school season, but their club season, they're good. And it's a hard thing, in my opinion, for players to go unless they have the right coaching. I will say this. I saw your team at a club tournament once. And that was like when I knew you were the head coach at Meridian, but I hadn't actually gone to a game yet of Meridians. I went to a game of Meridians because I saw your guys' club team, and it was actually your son who I was super impressed with, because he wasn't any taller than me. He was like 6'2" or whatever at the time. Like, he wasn't that tall. And I just remember someone saying, "Oh, that's the Meridian coach's son." All of a sudden, that dude, your boy, dunks it in traffic off one leg with a one-hand slam. I wasn't expecting him to dunk it at all. He was driving at the bucket, and I was just like, oh, he'll get a nice, like, attack the rim, maybe get a foul. He throws it down, and I'm like, oh, man, this kid's athletic. All right, let's go. So, I mean, that's when I was like, wow, okay. And then I kind of just, like, was attracted to the team, and I was like, okay, cool. And then I came and saw some of the Meridian games after that. But that's where, I mean, so to the club team's defense, like, it did get the exposure that I needed to be able to go and catch some other games. But so,
well, let me just tag one thing, and I'm going to try to tie this in. It's going to sound like I'm talking about myself, and I don't mean to. Okay, but as far as athletes getting recruited out of Idaho, I mean, I am probably the most recruited, or at least the top 5, right? I had to be listed as one of the top 15 players in the West Coast to get that type of exposure, and so that's the part that I want people to understand. And it's so different now than when I played, but you have to be top 50 to be a guy, now that doesn't mean like my son, he's going to go to a JC, which is perfect for him because it's so different now with all the transfer portal and everything like that. It's the perfect situation for him, but really good for Idaho doesn't necessarily mean you're going to just walk out and go to University of Utah and they're going to roll out the red carpet. It just doesn't work that way anymore. So the club basketball scene around Boise is just a little misleading, I think, as far as what is really good. What's really good? That this player might be really something in this tournament or for his age group or anything like that, and this 2020 class is as good as what's come along in a long time, the class that just graduated. But what's really, really good isn't clearly understood when you look at what it takes to play at the D1 level. There's still a lot of misunderstandings about that here locally.
Totally. Oh, it's so interesting hearing it from your perspective. That's awesome. And hey, best of luck to your side. I think I'm actually a fan of JUCO basketball, especially in certain areas, because there's a lot of talent out there and there's a lot of things you can learn from it. It's some people always say, oh, it's not D1. No, I'm a big advocate of JUCO basketball. If you get the right school and the right system and the right coaching, for that matter, your development can skyrocket. If you're the right type of player, some players don't use it the right way. Some players do. And then they catapult their careers later on. So, and like you said, you got to be patient. And then when the time's right, you might be hitting that stride right at the perfect time. Now, Coach, 2017, Meridian High School, okay? They come looking for you. And that program had been like, and no disrespect to any of the coaches that, were there after our final year, but I remember, man, I'm telling you right now, the year that we graduated, we had a couple returners the next season, but they weren't like star players. We knew that, and they knew that, and they were trying to do what they could. They changed the offense all around. I think they won like 2 games, and then the next season they won like 2 games. And then I went on a mission for 2 years, came back. They were still struggling. And you'd hear a couple seasons, oh, they won like 8 games this year, or they won this. I'm like, oh man, they're still struggling. Rocky Mountain had been put into the Valley, which is a bigger school on the other side, probably about 3 miles down the road. And I'm like, man, this is a struggle. And it just continued to be that way for a while. All of a sudden, you come in there and the culture starts changing. First things first, when you got to Meridian High School, what were your first thoughts? Like, what did you need to change immediately? And then how did you start changing that culture a little bit?
Okay, what you're going to learn about me is I don't give short answers.
I like it, dude. This is awesome.
Let me just go a little bit backwards to go forward. So my son Donovan, actually, we live in Rocky Mountain District, and he played with most of those guys. A lot of those guys are on my club team. So we're looking at an 8th grade year, and his middle school team at Heritage, they were just, I mean, I don't think they had a game inside of 40 points. I look at Donovan. Rocky Mountain had gone, they had just gone to the state tournament and won consolation, and they were bringing 7 guys back. Their JV team and their soft frosh team was undefeated. And they're bringing in this Heritage group it's just loaded, right? They didn't even have Townsend at that time. And so I look at Donovan and I said, look, man, you're going to go there. There's no doubt you can play there, but you're going to go there. And to me, it's going to be hard for you to stand out because there's so much talent there that nobody's going to be the guy. And Mike Chatterton was the Meridian coach. Mike started Boise Slam. I've known Mike since I was 10 years old. He's my high school teammate. And so I said, look, Coach Chatterton's over at Meridian, and they got some players that are coming up, and he's going to coach you right, and you're going to be able to develop more as a player because you're just going to be required to do more than you are if you're sitting with 3, 6, 7 guys on your front line. So to Donovan's credit, he decided, I'm going to go to Meridian and I'm going to try to rebuild this thing. So my connection to Meridian wasn't even at first, it wasn't even a coach. I was just a dad.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. And so then, and I had talked to Mike Chatterton and I said, look, you're going to be around, right? And stuff like that. Well, then some stuff happened and Mike had to part ways with Meridian, and through no fault of his own. And I'm thinking, here I talked my kid into going to this school, and the main reason that he's going just left. So now what? And it was pretty quick conversation that I was told, you need to take that job, which I had never thought. I did not think I was going to be a high school coach really ever again. And so anyway, that's how I get to Meridian, and I get there, and we had been down. I mean, that we had been down for a while. And so what the hardest thing to do is to get guys who aren't used to winning to expect to win. That's the hardest thing, because it's way back here. It's not something they think of consciously. It's way back in their mind. And that first summer, literally I got the job, we had 1 day of tryouts, and then we started our summer season. I mean, it happened that fast. So I would just try to get to learn the guys and understand their ins and outs, and we would really have great runs, but then we would just fall into an old habit and get, guys would get down, and I don't want to say they expected to lose, but they just didn't expect to win. So I think that was the first thing, was letting them know that, hey, the expectations here are we're going to be a solid team, and the expectation of you as players is high. And that goes to your grades, that goes to your attendance in class, that goes to your commitment to your teammates and things like that. So that was really the first thing. I also felt like this is just kind of how I am, man. Look, those kids needed to know that I really cared about them. I genuinely care about them as young men, and they're not just a player in a uniform that I'm going to utilize for a couple years while they're there and then turn them loose. And so we've been working on that for a while. And I give all the credit to the guys that have gone through, because it hasn't been easy. I mean, it's not like I went in there and just had a group hug and everything turned around. I mean, I get after guys, and I try to support them, and I try to love them, but I try to coach them. And so that was really the starting point.
Man, okay. I had a feeling like you come into a situation like that, and from a coach's perspective, you've seen all these other coaches have tried. You kind of look at the history, like they tried to do the same thing. They probably came in short tenure. This one came in here, tried to turn it around, short tenure, and you have to come in there and try to change things up a little bit. It's probably difficult to do so. But in my opinion, from the outside perspective, it seemed like it was a pretty quick change. I know it's probably a lot of work that went on behind the scenes for that. Like you just mentioned, there's a lot that went on trying to change this culture, trying to change their mentality to expect to win. But to me, it was like, oh, wow, you could feel a momentum shift with that program. I really could. Like, obviously, the whole valley around here, we knew of Rocky Mountain High School. They're nationally ranked. They're just loaded with talent. Everyone's parents are moving in there. If they're coming from out of state, they move there because they want to go play at Rocky because they win. And this, I mean, I'm not going to lie. Like, I was like 29 years old at the time, and I remember walking, like, Rocky Mountain High School's basketball players were at like a restaurant. I'm like, dude, every one of these kids is literally over 6'5". Like, what is going on over here? Like, I was like, they're a talented team, but like, you could sense just a couple miles down the road, Meridian was shifting. When you guys started sensing that momentum, what happened as a program? Like, could you sense that with your players, that they started to expect that and they started knowing, like, okay, we can compete with these guys?
Well, again, I think the real answer to that question is they weren't given a choice. I mean, my guys weren't given a choice of, hey, do you feel like being a good basketball team? That was not an option. This is your only choice. This is how we're going to do it here. And if you want to be a part of this, this is how you're going to do it. Now, again, we're still shaking off. I called it scar tissue. We still had to get rid of some scar tissue from guys that had, honestly, man, I mean, they had it rough, right? I mean, it's not like the record was bad. The scores were bad, and so when you're getting blitzed by 40 points and stuff like that, it's really tough to say, you know what? Yeah, let's roll our sleeves up and let's get after these guys. I mean, it's just hard to get yourself there mentally. And especially, like Donovan's age group, they came in from successful club programs, successful middle schools. So they were used to winning. But, the guys that were there before that really hadn't had that same success. And so, I get all these great compliments. I love how you coach, and I love how calm you are on the sideline and things like that. And, if you talk to my players, they will all tell you, I think, a couple things. They'll say, look, Coach Sanor, we know Coach Sanor loves us. All right. We know he loves us. But second off, we also know his expectations are through the roof. And if you don't meet those expectations, he's going to let you know. And there is going to be absolutely no question about what he's saying to you. So, I don't know if we ever felt it turning. I think we just are taking steps, and we're doing that right now. We're just continuing to take steps forward, and the more we take, the better we do. We have guys now. Last year's team went into games, and when we lost, it was shocking. When we lost to Rocky Mountain the first time, I mean, we were stunned. Because I think we had them. We were up 3 with 3 to go or something like that. And then those guys ran off. They got a bunch of offensive rebounds on us. I mean, that was the difference, is they got offensive rebounds and putbacks. But I mean, if you would have seen our locker room, we were stunned. So I know you're talking about 2017. I guess again, the short answer to your question is that I don't give guys a choice on how we're going to go about trying to be successful. And some people like it, some people don't. I don't get after kids personally, but I will get after kids 100% if they are not meeting the expectations of Meridian basketball.
Totally. And I think the players respect you. You can totally tell that they believe in your mission. It's almost like a real life Coach Carter, or a modern day Coach Carter situation here. Like, you can sense that they believe in the system, they believe in the coaching. So that's the most important piece. I think that's awesome. And like, as a fan coming like over here, I'm like, wow, dude, you can see these players, they play for them. They play for each other, but they play for their coach. Like, you can sense that. I've had teams where we've played and we didn't like the coach. Like, it was hard. We didn't believe in the coach. And I'll just be honest. It was probably a mentality problem for me being young and just being prideful. But there was also times where we were like, okay, we might be losing right now, but we believe in what coach is telling us to do. And like, let's go do it. Like, we know that he knows what he's talking about. So you could sense that your players knew that. Now, this last season, you guys were on a tear, and arguably, like, as I was following it, obviously you can talk about the school down the street. Yes, we know them, but there were 2 other schools in this district that were like superior to the majority of schools that have been here. Like, if you, any other year, like, Meridian is like top of the state, like in my opinion. I'm not even just saying that because I'm talking to you. I'm like, I'm dead serious. You and Bora, and obviously you got Rocky, but you guys are phenomenal. And it was just an amazing season. When you guys made the state basketball tournament, what was the feeling in the locker room when you guys broke that barrier and actually made, like, I want to know from your perspective as a coach, how happy you were, or if you even showed emotion, one. And then two, what did the players think? Your son was on the team. What was that like for you being able to coach your son into the state tournament?
Well, it was wonderful. Being able to coach Donovan, period, has been great. He's just he's a rare kid, and it's hard coaching your kid because there's times that I will say things to him that could really affect our relationship. And to his credit, man, he wants to be coached. So it was great. This is going to sound like a little bit of a downer. We went to the district tournament to win it. So losing to Bora and, dug on it. I mean, those guys, they played great. Coach Dennis did a wonderful job. But we had nailed biter with Rocky the first time. The second time they got after us, it was right after our stinky sneaker game. So I didn't handle that. We played them the next night. And I did not approach that game the right way. And to your point, that Rocky Mountain team this year, we won't see another team like that for another 20, with that much height, that much athleticism. And this 2020 group is it's just rare. I mean, you look at Austin at Bora, you look at Tanner at Eagle, I mean, all the guys at Rocky, the guys at Meridian, it's just rare. But going into that locker room after beating Boise, I walked in there and it was pretty quiet. I mean, literally, they were happy, but it was more of just like another day at the office. So I sensed that when I walked in, because I walked in after the players got in, and Donovan told me, he goes, man, I didn't even realize we made state. I was just so focused on beating Boise that I didn't even really rethink about, the next thing. And so I had to go in there and I had to liven it up a little bit, so I started jumping around and yelling and stuff like that. And then, it kind of came up. So, they were happy, but I think there was just a little bit of, man, this is great, but we didn't enter the district tournament just to make state. We really felt like we had a shot at winning the whole thing. So, it was great. We appreciated it, but we weren't necessarily satisfied.
Man, so that speaks wonders to the way that you got them shifted mentally. Seriously, like I just finished the book called Relentless by Tim Grover. Tim was Kobe's trainer, Michael Jordan's trainer, Dwayne Wade's trainer. He talks about that whole mindset of like when you get something done, like you're never satisfied, you're always going for more kind of thing. Obviously, the Mamba mentality. If you ever remember like Kobe talking at the press conference, job's not finished. Job finished? Like he always said that, like it's not finished. He was never satisfied. And obviously you guys had the mentality like, yeah, you're happy, but you didn't win the tournament. You didn't win district. So you're kind of like, it's not like what you want. It's not the ultimate goal. So it takes that mentality. And that's not the same mentality. I want everybody listening to this podcast to understand that Meridian High School basketball did not have that mentality for over a decade. Okay. Like that's just the reality of it. It was not good. And the fact that you were able to shift that and help them, and credit to yourself and the kids themselves, the young men, for being able to get there. It's just phenomenal. Now, here's the question, Coach. We're excited. Like when I saw that you were like, I was like a kid in a candy shop, man. I was like, oh my gosh, Meridian just made state. Let's go. Like, and I work, my studio is literally right across the street from the Idaho Center. So I had already I told my boss, I'm like, hey man, I'm taking a longer lunch during the state tournament. Meridian's playing first round. I got to go catch that game. And, he was totally cool about it. But I'm wondering, like, I came on here, I even did like a little thing, like, hey, like I was trying to I was so excited. I wanted everybody to come in the Valley, just like, come check this out, guys. This is like a big moment. But when you guys found out, like, this is, I tell you, it's a modern day Coach Carter situation. I'm not even joking. You guys are a stellar team, like arguably top 2-3 in the state of Idaho at the time. And you get matched up with the top team in the state in Rocky Mountain. What were your thoughts there? Or was it one of those things like, okay, well, it's just got to get the job done?
I didn't care. I
figured. After you're in the talk, I figured.
If we had, when I was at Boise High, Meridian lost in the district tournament with Scott Kern and Roddy Johnson and stuff like that. And so we ended up playing them in the semifinals. And it was the same deal. Hey, we're going to play them at some point anyway. So semifinals, first round, championship, doesn't matter to me. And that's the way we felt against Rocky Mountain. I don't agree with how it's seeded, how the state tournament is seeded. But I found some old scrapbooks of mine, and guess what they were talking about in 1986? Hey, this is how the state tournament should be seeded. So it's been messed up for a long time. I didn't really care that much. I thought we were going to beat Rocky. They came out, let's be honest, right? They came out like something we did not expect. They scored, think about this. They scored 17 points on 6 of 7 shooting.
Yeah, I was there.
Yeah.
Never
and
seen
so,
that.
hey, credit to them. It was their night. They played really well. Did we see the real Rocky? No, I think we saw the best possible Rocky. I think the real Rocky, and did Post Falls see the real Rocky? No, I think Post Falls saw a little lesser version of the real Rocky. So, it just, in a tournament setting, right? The state tournament does not identify the best team in the state. It identifies the best team for 3 days. That's all. And, I don't want to make excuses, but I will tell you, my big guy, Brody, he dislocated his kneecap twice, so the second half of the season, we weren't even the same team. Donovan strains a tendon in his knee and rolls his ankle twice. So, we weren't even the same team at the end that we were at the beginning. So, and I'm sure Rocky probably had their injuries that they were dealing with. Bor probably had some of theirs, et cetera. But, look, the state tournament, again, that our goal is how good can we be at the end, right? And that's not even, when I look back on it, that's not even the right thing. Because when I look at our season last year, I say, okay, look, 20-5. You have to measure this thing across the whole season to really understand what you did. And we were 20-5. So that's kind of my takeaway from it. Matching up with Rocky the first game, it could have been anybody. I don't care. But it just depends on whose day it is. Timberline almost got Post Falls. Post Falls beats Rocky pretty handily the next night. It's just tournament, man. It's anybody's day and whatever happens. So I'm just really proud of our guys and the way that they stuck together with it. We make a lot of, you talk about culture, we make a lot of promises to each other. And we actually have a notebook. Each kid has a notebook. We have a thought of the day, and every kid makes a promise based off of that thought. And then we get together about once a month and we read our promises to each other. And I will tell you that when I went back through and listened to the promises, I'm just checking off boxes saying, yep, we lived up to that one. We lived up to that one. We lived up to that one. And who gets the trophy at the end that's icing on the cake. But the fact that that our group can look back at themselves and look back at each other and say, we made promises to each other that we kept, that means everything to me.
That's so awesome. That is so cool, man. It's just so cool. And it's like giving me chills thinking about it again. Like just the brotherhood of being on a team together and having each other's backs. Then obviously the way that you instilled that in your players doing the promises and everything like that, man, it's crazy. And like you said, I love the points you made about a state tournament. It's I was there at that game. I was like this. That was the first time I actually watched Rocky that season. And everyone's like, see, I told you. I'm like, yeah, but man, of all the years I've been following basketball, you don't shoot that well every single game. I'm sorry. Like, I'm like, you're talking like 6'8" dudes pulling up jumpers, like full speed. I'm like, that's just how nah, man. And then, like you said, it's just about matchups. Maybe it's not, they're not. Yeah. And then it just happens in a state tournament. It was unfortunate there, but I could tell you guys, even the next game, I went to the next game the next day in the consolation bracket, and you guys were loosened up and you were playing, and I loved it. I loved that they were having fun. They were having a good time out there and making their way through and playing together and just having a good time together.
So the mistake that I made, right? A coach has to fess up when he makes a bad call. And going from the Mountain View Stinky Sneaker to the Rocky game during the season, I handled it terrible. You can tell by the outcome. I tried to calm us down from the Stinky Sneaker game, and instead of, I should have just ridden the high. Right? I should have just ridden the high from Stinky Sneaker, rolled it right into Rocky because we needed energy. I didn't realize how badly during the season. Now, I'm also going to give myself some credit where I did it right.
Good.
And going from the Rocky game to the Timberline game, I said something that I was really proud of to our guys. I said, look, now we've got no shot at this championship. Now we're going to find out who loves basketball versus who just wants something from basketball. And the guys, man, they absorbed that. And they went out and played against Timberline, like you saw. I mean, they played for absolute love for the game of basketball. They played for love of each other. I think of even for love of Meridian, and they played wonderfully. So couldn't be more proud of them. And I'm going to give myself a little bit of a pat on the back because I think that was what they needed to hear, and it means that I know my guys, which I'm really proud of. And they did really well. So I'm super proud of them.
You should be proud of yourself, man, and proud of them. It was awesome watching that. And that's cool to hear what you said too, because you could totally tell from a fan's perspective. As you guys heard, I didn't know he said that. I just said that before, and you can tell that's had a major impact on his players. Now, Coach Sanor, tell us this real quick. You know, you had an awesome season. You broke the barriers, but we just talked about it. Like your mentality, that job's not finished, right? Now we got to keep finding a way. Like once you hit the top, this is where you start to see where people either they coast on that and they're like, oh, okay, I'm good, they're satisfied, or do they continue to try to like improve themselves? What can we expect from your program? I mean, there's a lot of unknowns right now with this pandemic going on, but like what can we expect from your program in this upcoming season, assuming things continue to play out as normal, quote unquote?
So remember when you said, like, if there's anything you shouldn't ask, right? You shouldn't ask me about next year's team because I'm so excited about the team that we have coming in. I don't want to talk too much about them because I'm gonna set them. They're so special. I mean, okay. They're so special. They're special young men. We've got a guy, Drayson Fisher. We make our promises, and he shoots me a message probably a month or so after the season. And he says, I was reading through my promises and I realized that I hadn't made any promises about being a leader. And I just want you to hold me accountable to that. Well, Drayson's one of our guards. He drives other teams crazy, right? But here I'm saying, this is a guy that's reading his promises a month after the season ended, right? I mean, I would send him a nightly reminder, read your promises, I want him to do it every night. And he's still doing it a month after the season and trying to add more promises to the list. Forget about talent because we're going to be talented. Okay. I got 7 guys coming back off of a team that went 20-5. So the skill level is there. What I'm so excited about is the young men that I have and their dedication to themselves, each other, and our program. It's really hard not to get excited get excited because again, it's so much more than wins and losses. It's about these young men and what I'm able to share with them that has meant so much to me that they can now make their own, and eventually somewhere down the line, they're going to pass it on to somebody else. And this thing is going to, whether they're at Meridian or at one of our basketball camps or they're coaching their own son someday, they're going to be able to take something from this group that's really special, that really made it special, and they're going to be able to pass it on. And that's what I'm so excited about. We are not resting on our laurels. We want to get better every single day. We are working our tails off under the rules that we have to work within. And guys are just driven. And so I can't wait. I'm so excited that I pray that things happen like they're supposed to and we get back to normalcy, because watching these guys play next year is just it's just something I can't wait for.
Yeah, we look forward to it as well. And so what we'll do, guys, is we'll leave that here because what I plan on doing is talking to Coach Sanor a few more times, maybe as the season comes up and as we start to progress, so we can kind of keep an eye on this. It's something I've always wanted to do too, is just kind of cover my alma mater and kind of see how they're doing. And now that Coach Sanor has been on the show, you guys kind of hear it. I want you guys to kind of pay attention, keep an eye on Meridian High School basketball now going forward, and kind of keep an eye on these young men as they develop into men, so to speak. So, Coach Sanor, I appreciate you joining the show. It's been an awesome time talking to you, and I just really appreciate your time, man. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, this was great. Thanks for having me, and this was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And you guys know the drill. Make sure you're subscribed to the show. Leave me a review on iTunes. Share it with your friends and family. And we'll talk to you guys next week. Guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of my show. Now, if you could go and do me a favor, head over to iTunes, give me 5 stars, and leave me a review. It would be greatly appreciated. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your support.